difficulties, so we're getting there. All right, welcome everyone. This session is the introduction to Dynamics GP Payroll and Human Resources. So if it's something you're not necessarily interested in, just want to get, don't be embarrassed. If you want to go do something else, that's okay. Take good advantage of your sessions to find something that fits you, okay? All right, I'm going to, we have Q&A at the end, but I always put Q&A at the beginning for me, so I do the Q and you do the A in this part. Just a quick poll, just so give me a feel for who's in the audience. How many of you use Dynamics GP currently? Not for payroll, but just use Dynamics GP. Okay, most everyone. How many of you use Dynamics GP for payroll? A few. How many of you are thinking about using Dynamics GP for payroll? A few more. Okay, good. So for those of you that already use payroll, this will be, you'll see some things that you recognize and a refresher. You might see some things that you're not aware of that are neat that you can utilize. Now, for those of you who do not use Dynamics GP for payroll, you will get an overview of the payroll solution and what's included with it and how it functions at a general level. Obviously, we're not going to get into a lot of pay codes and taxes and deductions and processing payroll and all the reports. This is because we don't have 3 days, we only have an hour. And so it's going to be very high level. But the purpose of the session today is really just to give you an overview, to give you a feel for the solution, what's there, and hopefully give you the impression that, well, golly, this looks like it's a pretty good solution. I think we'll dive into it a little bit more and learn more about it.
Can you talk about also other HR functions outside of payroll?
Yes, we will also talk about some of the HR functions as well. Okay? So I'm going to grab the clicker here. We'll go through a few slides. We'll do about 50-50 slides versus demo. Unless the demo doesn't work, then we'll do slides. Okay? And feel free to, if there's quick questions, we'll try to get those through the beginning. Otherwise, if you want to save your questions to the end, we'll definitely have time to answer those at the end. All right, here's what we're going to do in the next hour that we have together. I call it the flow. This is the flow of the presentation. It's more fun than agenda. Okay? Introduction and session goals. We've talked about that a little bit already. We'll do a little bit more introduction there. We're going to review Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 licensing. That's really kind of what spurred this session to be on the list. We'll do a quick demo of an overview of Dynamics GP Payroll and Human Resources. We're going to also talk about the Dynamics GP Extended Pack for Payroll and Human Resources. So it's a separate piece of functionality that you can acquire in addition to the license for 2013. Additional Payroll and Human Resources. Got that? Okay. I added a little piece of what's coming next, just to talk about kind of the future things with some of the architecture changes in GP Next. What does that open up for us on the Human Resources and Payroll side? Summary and conclusions. That's where we put all of our deep thoughts together so that you walk away with tangible conclusions at the end of the session. It's really not that complicated. It's really just wrap up. Okay. And then Q&A, final thoughts, anything else that we want to cover. We'll definitely do that at the end of the session. Sound like a good plan? Yep. All right, good, because that's the only one we got. So, all right. So this cat, Dan Doolin, that's me. I work for a company called Integrity Data. Just to put it in context, Integrity Data is we're a Microsoft Dynamics GP ISV. We've been in the space for since 1996, however many years that is. And we do provide products and services that enhance Dynamics GP Payroll and Human Resources. And we're not here to talk about those today. But we've worked with Payroll and Human Resources and a lot of the Microsoft partners and a lot of the Microsoft customers that use it to add functionality to the product. We do some work directly with Microsoft on the core product itself to help them add features, help them determine which features to add, and so on. And I personally have been doing that for about 14 years. So there's the Twitter and things you can follow if you want. I don't do much tweeting, but if you want to, there's some interesting stuff. Sometimes it's about work, sometimes it's not. Keith Schmidt, one of my team members, he's also sitting in the front. He's supposed to be speaking. He bailed out, left me up here by myself. No, that's okay. It's a pretty quick session, so it's kind of hard to divvy up who does what, and we just run into each other up here. So I'm going to do it, and he's going to answer all the questions. Sounds like a good deal to me. If you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to come up and talk to us. We're also in the expo hall, of course, right there in line with all the other GP ISVs. So happy to answer any questions that you have about the session or about payroll or about, of course, our products or anything else. If you're just running into things that you want to ask us about, that's what we're here for. So our contact information is there. You can feel free to contact us here or afterwards. We're always happy to help any way that we can. All right. Licensing, it's one of those things that the amazing part about this is that we were able to keep some of the same information from Convergence last year and talk about licensing. Usually, it changes between Convergences, so it's a little less work for me. So, as you all know, and as I mentioned, the impetus for this session was that there's a change in licensing as you go to Dynamics GP 2013, when you upgrade to Dynamics GP 2013. In the past, with business ready licensing on Dynamics GP 10 and 2010, you had to purchase the payroll module, the direct deposit module, and a few other modules from Microsoft as an a la carte piece. So you would get all your users and you get the distributions and financials and all that stuff, but payroll was always separate. Okay, it was a sore spot to those of us that love payroll. But with Dynamics GP 2013, what they did was they included payroll and human resources within the starter pack. Okay, so if you purchase Dynamics GP on 2013 license, or if you upgrade to that license, you then get the payroll and human resources functionality included with your license. You no longer have to purchase it separately. So what that's done, of course, is brought in a lot more Dynamics GP customers into the fold of using payroll and human resources. No longer. I mean, there's still a lot of customers, and if you're one of those, it's fine that outsource that payroll to ADP, Paychex, or a few other providers. But we have seen a lot of other customers, go the other way and bring that payroll back in house because, from a cost perspective, they can do that now that it's included with the licensing. Okay. When we look a little bit closer at what's included in the starter pack, you'll see under payroll management for both the U.S. and Canada, it includes payroll for unlimited employees. Previously, it was tiered pricing. The more employees you have, then the more you pay. Payroll direct deposits included. Federal magnetic media for sending your W-2 information to the federal government. Okay, and there's a payroll connect piece that is used to integrate with ADP as well. On the human resources side, also unlimited employees. Also includes manager and employee self-service on the business portal. Okay, so managers and employees can log in and do some of those things. And also there's a position control module that's typically used in government or public sector organizations that was an extra piece from Microsoft that is included with the GP 2013 license. So all those pieces were a la carte license modules that you had to purchase for a few $1,000s a piece, depending on the size of your organization. And with that license change, again, those are included with your Dynamics GP 2013 license. Okay. So what we're here to do is to show you some of the basic information and a quick overview of what those pieces are and how they function within the system. Okay. Is there anybody in the room, and again, don't be embarrassed, that's never seen Dynamics GP in person? Okay, good. Okay. If you didn't, we would spend a little bit more time on the interface, but okay. The Extended Payroll and HR Pack that I mentioned a few minutes ago includes 4 major pieces. Human Resources Advanced, or as most of us call it, Advanced Human Resources. This was sort of the legal term they put on it for Advanced Payroll, PTO Manager, and Benefit Self-Service Suite. We're going to talk about what's in each of those pieces when we cover that in more detail. Again, this is an extra component that you can now purchase, and again, it's much less expensive than what it was before, that you can purchase in addition to your 2013 license. So this piece, just for clarity, is still covered, or is still a la carte. Okay? There was a question earlier before we started the session about doing labor accruals. That's a piece that's covered in what was called Advanced Payroll, is now called the HR Payroll Extended Pack plus something additional. It's Extended Pack, okay? All right. When we talk to customers that are in your situation of, well, we use Dynamics GP, we're thinking about payroll, or even as we're talking to a new prospect that's on another system and evaluating Dynamics GP, a lot of important questions come up around payroll. And payroll is a sensitive area. It's got to be done on time. You've got to pay employees correctly. There's a lot of legal requirements, a lot of compliance and things like that. And so I tried to summarize the questions that come up in that process. And some of those are on the screen. Is it integrated? So, payroll, is it integrated with the financial system? How tightly is it integrated into the rest of Dynamics GP? Will I be the only one? So, how many people use the system? If I start using payroll on my, in a very small group, or is that a very large group? Okay, and I can't answer that one in a demo, so I'm going to say that's a very large group. And with the rough numbers that I've heard, because obviously Microsoft doesn't publish that information, but somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 companies in the U.S. and other countries such as Jamaica, Bermuda, a few others use U.S. payroll. Okay, so there's a lot of organizations that use it. Is it intuitive? Is it easy to use? Well, we're going to show you some of that. And if you're familiar with Dynamics GP, then you're familiar with the user interface and how it functions. Will it do what I need it to do? Okay. Is it going to meet your requirements? Can you do your job with the solution? We can't necessarily answer that in a 20-minute demo, but we're going to start to give you, again, some ideas, and hopefully you walk away with, I think I can do that, I want to look at it a little bit more, or not going to happen. Okay. But that's the point of the session, is to help you make that decision. How tough is it to use? Okay. Is it a 500-step process to add an employee? Okay, those kinds of things. And of course, the big one for human resources and reporting or in payroll is, can I get the reports that I need? And that's compliance reports, that's 941s, it's all of those things. But it's also, the quick lists, the ad hoc reporting, and the nice graphs and those kinds of things also. So what we're going to try to do, or what I'm going to try to do, is show you how those things. Answer those questions for you in about a 15 to 20-minute demonstration. Okay. Any other questions? For those of you that are in a room and use Dynamics GP but aren't using payroll yet, and you're kind of in this position of thinking about it, are there other questions that come up in your mind that aren't on that screen? I got them all right? Go. Good question. How difficult is it to deploy? Okay. Good. We'll try to get that one answered too before the end of the session. If we don't do it in a demo, we'll try to get some other feedback in the room also. Anything else? All right. Let's dive in. All right, so what we're going to be looking at here is Dynamics GP 2013, obviously. So that's the reason we're here. And I'm going to put it on the screen so you can see it too. It's a joke. Even though it's a payroll session, it's okay to laugh. Okay? Even if the joke's not funny, you can throw out some sympathy stuff. But, all right. I've got to have fun when I'm doing it, so hopefully you can have a little fun too. Okay. All right. Dynamics GP 2013. The home screen's been around for a long time. Obviously, this is a user-based home screen. We got it set to the payroll role. So you can see on the screen that we've got our tasks associated with payroll, the employee maintenance, a letter writing assistant, payroll transaction entry, building checks, and so on. Of course, you got the reminders. You've got the connect capability with Microsoft. You've got your list of reports that are your favorite reports. We've got some reports that are coming up from SQL reporting services in the home screen. I'm just going to show you one of those now. The reporting component of the questions is going to be mixed in with everything. So we're going to see that throughout the presentation. So we can just take a quick look at this report. It's going to render in a web part. Okay. Just real quick, that's how you can get to some of that information. These are SQL reporting services reports that you can access. Benefit deduction summary is a good one. Just really, keep clicking the wrong one. It's just a really quick way to get to some of that information. It's not a standard report writer report. This is reporting services. That's the one I was looking for. Just really quickly being able to get to some of that information. So, when you think about it, answering that question, is it integrated? You're using all the tools that you have available on Dynamics GP, SQL reporting services, Smart List, Excel-based reports, all those things that you can do throughout the rest of the system, of course, you can do with payroll. You've got drill back capability from here as well. You can expand. You can do all kinds of stuff. So, again, the reporting functions are just built in everywhere. All right, let's go back. Okay, so that's the home page. When we go over to the Human Resources and Payroll area page, that's where you start to see how the system is really structured. So I just like to spend a couple minutes just kind of going over, just reviewing the structure. From a payroll perspective, there's two primary areas where you function, and that's setup, okay, which, of course, I have down at the bottom. That's where you set up all your codes. So a benefit code, deduction code, pay code, anything like that you're going to use across the employee base. Okay? So we're going to set up a new deduction code. That's something that we're going to use across thousands of employees or hundreds of employees or however many you have. Now, what's interesting about that and what's nice about that is that if you need to make a change to a deduction code, for example, it's the beginning of the year, of course, healthcare premiums change, probably going up. You need to change that for all the employees that have that deduction code. What's nice is that you change it once at the setup level, and it will roll down to all the employees that have that deduction code. Okay, so when you talk about ease of use and even that deployment question, the system doesn't make you change it 200 or 300 times for all those employees. It will go in and do that for you once you change it at the setup level. Okay? So at setup, that's where you maintain your codes. That's where you define all of those things. And then on the maintenance side of things, that's where you're doing the employee-specific changes. So, yes, sorry, this employee has this deduction code, and I'm going to change the frequency or do something a little bit different with that. Okay. Now, on the area page, you can also load these personalized lists. And you'll notice that there's several different ways to navigate through the system. And those of you that use it are familiar with that. From an employee or from an HR perspective, we like to do a lot of listing, a lot of filtering. Who has this, who does this, who's in this department, who's there. Sorry about that. And this is a nice way to do that. And as I highlight an employee, you will see the top of the screen light up for different things that we can do with that employee. So as a user, you determine, well, this is what I want, this is the way I want to do it, or I want to do it a little bit differently. But you can see that we can get to all the information specifically for that employee. On the right side of the screen, you'll notice that also SQL reporting services is kicking in and starting to publish some reports or show you some reports that are available that you go ahead and run for that employee. And I'm sure you can see all the great information that's in that report right there on the screen. I can't even see what it says on my screen, but you can make it bigger and run the report. Okay. So you can see all the information that you can get to in the list on the left-hand side of the screen. Again, coming back to reporting, as I click on payroll reports, if you see it scroll through, if you look at the bottom of the screen, 199 reports. Okay, and that's just, this is just a baseline image. I haven't added anything to it. I haven't done much work with it. That's just really what we call a quote out of the box. Okay, if we look at human resources reports, it would show, there it is, 236 or something like that. 285. And as I scroll down, you'll see all the reports that are available covering really everything you can think of from a human resources perspective. EEO, employee list. There's even labels in here for if you want to print labels for all the employees. There's OSHA reports, position reports, reviews, anything and everything. And this is really just the report writer capability. So this isn't Excel reporting services and Smart List yet. Okay. If you want to look at some Excel reports, and again, this is what's shipping with the product. This isn't stuff that Dan went and spent a bunch of time creating and stuff like that. So these are all Excel-based reports, so we can pick one here and run it. Let's see here. If I click on this, it's just going to take me out to Excel and provide me with the information. So think about that. So think about having not only the reports that you're used to, but some of these great reports if you have Excel activated. No licensing people in the room, right? You've got that report sitting right there on your desktop, right there in your area page. And you don't have to have the whole list there. You could have a filter that just shows you your personalized list. Quickly get to this information. Obviously, this is pulling live from the database. It's rendering in Excel. You can modify these. You can have charts and graphs hooked up to them, so it automatically prints the chart and the graph. You know, not to talk out of school, but sometimes bosses can ask for things with unrealistic time frames. Like, hey, I want a report with a graph that shows this in like 10 minutes. Yeah, or yesterday. I need this yesterday. And kind of freak out about it a little bit, and that's crazy. But if you have these tools sitting there, then you can quickly produce those reports and those charts and graphs and stuff that they like to see. I always used to tease my boss. If I had a report with bad news on it, I'd put a chart on it. Just because oh, that's a nice chart. And he wouldn't look at the information. So lots of charts. Anyway, side note. But you know, as you can see, it's really easy to get to this information. And that's the point of it. And that's what, I mean, we all have, I mean, you could have data anywhere, but being able to pull that out, use it when you need it, use it to make good decisions. Obviously, that's the purpose of any software, and this is just demonstrating its capabilities to do that. When you think about, just one quick thing on Excel reports, think about people that don't use the system. Think about you know, the boss that asks for that report frequently and needs it. You know, with Excel-based reports, you can have, that person can have a copy of that Excel-based report on their desktop, open it up, let it refresh the data, and be able to view that information on their own screen when they want to see it and not have to ask you for it, without them having to go into Dynamics GP and then ask you how to navigate through Dynamics GP and stuff like that. Okay. So again, think about all the different ways that you can deploy that functionality. And maybe some of you that are already using the system have done that already, and you've seen the power of that. So it is great being able to have those hooks from Excel back into the database. Okay. All right, let's go back to the home page. And I clicked on employee maintenance. Okay, so here's the primary employee record. Okay, of course, what you'll see is that when I click on the Go To button, it can get the payroll information and get the human resources information. Believe it or not, back in the day, and we do see it come up sometimes now, there's a separate record for payroll and a separate record for human resources. And what this does is obviously it gives you one employee record that shares information, they're integrated, and you can control who does what through security. So sometimes in a small company, you know, there's a payroll person that does the benefits and all that stuff too. In a larger company, it's this person does payroll, this person does deductions, this person does benefits on the HR side, this person does performance reviews, this person does licensing and safety and things like that. So you can separate those tasks using the security model. But it is an integrated solution so that you don't have, you know, 2 or 3 different addresses for the same employee record or multiple employee records. Okay. On the screen we have obviously name, employee ID, address information, social security number, adjusted hire date, all the things that you'd expect to see on the employee maintenance window. You also have this write letters capability. Okay. What that is a series of letters that are based in Word. Gives you the ability to create letters to employee about benefits, deductions, happy birthday, anything like that. So it's kind of a neat tool, but probably not something that's going to make you spend the money to implement the application. If you have additional positions for employees, you can add those. Some basic human resources information, okay, status, I-9 information, citizen information, vet information, emergency contact information. And you always have these extra fields. Extra fields are just fields that you can provide a label to. There's checkboxes, dates, alphanumeric, and so on. If you need to track an additional piece of information, it's not enough to do something like add an extender window or something like that. You can add those extra fields and keep track of that data within the HR system. What we see a lot of times, and we probably even do this ourselves, is that HR information, back up, the most widely used human resources application in the world is a Microsoft application, but it's Excel. That's just an easy way to keep track of information and update employee information. And that's okay, but it sits on somebody's local computer. It's not backed up. It's not secure from a, if you're talking about HIPAA or anything like that. It's not maintained with the employee file, and so there's a lot of risk and issues that come with that. The purpose of a human resources system many times is to get the data centralized, and then to work on the processes around making sure that the processes for updating that data are smooth and efficient. So when you talk about emergency contacts, extra fields, being able to have different places to store information, that's the reasoning for it. Okay, any additional information for an employee? Birth date, nickname, alternate name, gender, and so on. From a payroll perspective, let's take a look at a couple things here. Let's dive in a little bit with pay codes first. Okay, and we're going to look at pay codes specifically for this employee. And Adam Barr is an hourly employee. And so obviously when we assign this pay code to Adam, it inherits that by default the information that we set up at the setup level. Okay, so hourly wages are taxable and so on. So all that information has to be just set up only one time. When we assign it to the employee, it receives that default information, and then we can make changes to it. Okay, so we've got all the taxing and tax options are handled at the pay code level. So if an employee is weird from a tax perspective, then you can change that at the employee level. But if you need to set up a new pay code or change the way that certain pay is taxed, again, you change it one place and let those changes roll down. Let the system do that work for you. We can dictate if this is a primary pay code or not. The employee can have multiple pay codes, of course. Some examples when we look in the lookup are hourly pay, overtime pay, profit sharing, sick, vacation, and so on. Okay, all your usual suspects. This is good demo data. In real life, there's a much longer list typically of the pay codes that are used for the different employees and different types of employees. Deduction codes. Again, pretty much what you would expect. How is this deduction pre-tax or post-tax? Again, that lives at the setup level and defaults down. You can also change it at the employee level. With Dynamics GP, you've also got the ability to allow arrears transactions. So if the employee doesn't have enough pay or they didn't work, we still need to withhold deductions. Then it will keep track of those deductions and arrears. How is the deduction calculated? Percent of wages, flat amount, all those things. Sequencing deductions, garnishments, all those capabilities are handled within Dynamics GP within the payroll module. Okay, that's usually where you get into garnishments and a lot of those things. That's where a lot of the complexity comes in. But the system is fully featured around that and handles all that for you. Okay, you can see, just obviously we don't have time to go through all these, but and I do have a few extra in here that are features that we provide that are just showing up in the list from leave codes on down. Okay, so that stuff is not included with the core product. So you've got the summary information, quick assignments, a way to quickly assign pay codes, deduction codes, and benefit codes to employees. I mentioned tax information. Pay policies as part of the extended pack. So let's look at quick assignment just for a second. Just really quickly lets you bring on that new employee if you're just implementing, or you've hired a new employee and you're supposed to process payroll for them this afternoon. You can quickly get their code set up. Again, baseline on the human resources side. Benefit and deduction summary, just to show you a quick look at that. Drill down. You can see how quickly you can click through the screens to get to the information for the employee. Here's a 401k plan set up on human resources. Okay, so you can maintain plan information on the human resources side and then have that information roll down if you need to. So, for example, a 401k or health insurance where there's employer contributions and employee contributions, when you change that information in human resources, that's going to roll down to payroll to create that benefit deduction. The payroll deduction and the payroll benefit to show on the employee's paycheck. Okay, so if you're matching dollar for dollar on the 401k, you want the employee to see, here's your $50 that you contributed to your 401k, and oh yeah, the company contributed $50 also. Okay, same is true for health insurance, especially with it being so expensive. Show those employees how much you're paying for their health insurance. Okay. So the moral of that is that it can be two separate tasks, but it is integrated, and the information will flow between the two records, okay, from a human resources side and a payroll side. Okay. Also on the human resources side, you can track educational information. You can track position history, orientation, injury and illness, employee property, obviously performance reviews, all the things that you have to track for employees. This might look like a list of Excel spreadsheets that some currently have, just where you track that information. Obviously, the point is to get that into the HR system so it's secure and maintained. Okay? A lot of good places to store information, a lot of great things you can do with it, a lot of great reports that come out of it. All right, I'll show you a couple of neat things that you can do from an integration perspective. Okay, when we talk about, is it integrated with the rest of the system? A couple points. One is that you can set it up to where when you withhold a deduction for an employee, you've got to do something with that. So you withhold that 401k, right? You withhold that $50. You match it up with your $50, and you've got to send it to somebody so they can invest it, right? Well, that's got to go somewhere. So there's a payables transaction associated with that. So this window lets you assign that to say 401k deductions go to Hill's brokerage service. Well, that's nice, Dan. What's that mean? So when you process payroll through Dynamics GP and then you post that payroll, it will automatically create the payables transaction for all the deductions withheld, and in this case deductions. You can do it for the employer contributions as well. Creates that payables transaction for you to then pay that to Hill's brokerage service. Any questions about that? Yep. So the question was, can it do it electronically if you have electronic payment or EFT? The answer is yes. It'll create the transaction in payables, and then you can run that through the payables EFT process. I'm going to repeat the question, and you tell me if I got it wrong. Does it also print out the report, the supporting information to show each employee's detailed contribution? Is that kind of where you're heading with it?
Yeah, so right now, like we use Fidelity, so we have a CSV file that we send back to Fidelity that has the employee's social number on it, the amount that we're
Yes, all the supporting information is there in a report when you post payroll to show each employee's contribution. Another question in the back? No, that's not true. It would take the distribution accounts associated with, well, I'm going to answer it and then I'm going to answer it again. It will take the distribution accounts associated with a vendor. If you're looking to, the second answer is if you're looking to split it out by, I'm going to say, the insurance costs for this department that we're paying need to get posted to one account. That happens on the payroll side, and then this happens in a separate process, a separate posting process. Okay. On the payable side, there's only one account. So what should happen is that the expense should be posted on the payroll side and go to all those different accounts that you need. And then when you do the payables transaction, it should fulfill those expenses. But I'm not a debits and credits guy by trade, so if you come by our booth, there's somebody in our booth that can specifically answer that question. Okay, quick question. I'm going to try to repeat the question. Can taxes and oh, no, just U.S. Just U.S. The question was, can taxes and deductions be assigned to other countries? Did you have a different response to that? Okay. Oh, okay. It was something. Okay. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like when you assign it to a vendor, you said it creates a payable.
Yes.
So we pay our health insurance at the end of the month. So we split the deductions in half.
Sure.
So is that creating two payables?
It will create two payables transactions, and then you can take that and create one check. Pull both payables vouchers into one check to the vendor. Okay. All right. Now there's a mapping, when we talk about integration over to the general ledger, there's a mapping component, and I don't have good data in it, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. If we go to Tools, Setup, Posting, Payroll Accounts, what you do is, from a posting perspective, is you create this map, and you can see that I got very complicated with the configuration here. I said all of it goes to this account. What you would do is divide this up by department, position, and pay code. Those are the options that you have. So when we talk about posting employee cost to the general ledger, a lot of times organizations are used to doing that at the employee level. You know, this employee's cost goes here. Well, this is really a better way to do it, because if that employee moves around in the organization, if they cross around between different departments and different positions, we can record that on a payroll transaction. And this will post the cost by transaction. So when we go through that process, it will say, oh, they worked 8 hours in this department, and 8 hours in this department, and 8 hours in this position. And all those costs will get automatically split to the appropriate general ledger account. Okay, all the subsequent costs, like the benefit costs and the expenses associated with that employee as they move around, will also get split across multiple departments, positions, and pay codes. So you can, the nice part about that is that you can get very granular with the posting, which is what most organizations need. You can end up with thousands of records if you're a large organization in this window. But as that employee moves, their cost goes, based on the transaction data, that cost is going to get posted in the correct place. And that's important as people are watching budgets so close, as payroll is a big expense in any organization. You want to make sure that the cost gets allocated correctly. Department managers care about how that cost gets allocated, and who are they getting charged for an employee that worked in a different department. And so that is an important piece. So all that information does go over to the general ledger and creates those transactions and gets posted from there. That's an important piece from a financial perspective. If you're using ADP, you've got to import the GL transactions to make sure that you get the cost allocated correctly in the GL. This is all baked into the product. Okay. All right, I'm officially running behind schedule, but that's okay. All right, something else that I want to show you is just a quick self-service. Okay, business portal, employee center page, profile information, benefit information, pay stubs. This information, again, this is included with your 2013 license. Paychecks, direct deposit, W-4, they can view this information online. They can submit changes to this information. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more as we talk about some things that are upcoming next with Dynamics GP. The manager also has access to information about his or her direct reports. So the Manager Center page will show a lot of that information as well. Yes. 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 Yeah. I would rephrase it and say that these features on this platform are going away. They're going to be released on a different platform using a different architecture. So this architecture that you see here, this technology has a little bit of age on it. And so what Microsoft is doing is saying, all right, let's go to the next level. Let's make this, we want GP to be around for a long time. We want our customers to have a great experience. And so they're going to re-release these features on a different platform. And we'll talk about that a little bit more with the what's next in just a few minutes. Okay, but that's a good question. Kind of saw that one coming. So, yep, they are great features. And if you're using, these would quote unquote go away when you upgrade to Dynamics GP 2015. So, 2015 seems like it should be a lot farther than next year. But so if you wanted to use these today, you would use those until you upgrade to 2015, which could be, at a minimum, probably 9 to 10 months or a year. Okay. But good question and valid question. All right, let me switch back to PowerPoint and see where we're at. All right, we talked about a quick overview of Dynamics GP Payroll and Human Resources. It's hard for me to show you a good demo in 20 minutes because there's so much there and so many important pieces to payroll. But hopefully you got a quick idea of some of the features that are there. When we talk about the extended pack, Advanced Payroll, Advanced Human Resources, Benefit Self-Service, and PTO Manager, that's really intended to handle some large groups of functionality. Complex pay rate, labor analysis reporting, some vacation and sick accruals with the PTO manager, certification and license management, employee health and wellness tracking, and online benefit enrollment. So those are some of the pieces that are available in that extended pack. If you need some of those, then take a look at that and see if that's something you want to add to your license. Real quick, let's jump back in and show a few of those. Just one quick thing before I do that. I want to talk, just if you're not familiar with it, the payroll process. And where the cursor is, right above payroll transaction entry, that's where all the transactions come in. So I worked 8 hours on this day, I worked 8 hours on the next day. Whether that's coming into Dynamics GP directly, it's keyed in. It can be imported in from almost any time and attendance system that exists out there, or they can even come in from an Excel file. Okay. Once that's complete, you go through the build process, which is saying I want these employees, I want these batches of transactions, I want it to be the biweekly pay run for these pay dates and include these deductions and benefits. You build the report, or you build the check run, look at the report, and then you go into the calculate step, which is actually calculating the employee's pay, calculating their deductions, and calculating their net pay, and then have that report. So you can see all that information before you get to the process of printing the checks. Okay, so then you print the checks, and then you post the checks, and that updates the general ledger, creates all your reports, and pushes all that information over to the payables if you're doing that, and updates the history files for all the employees. There are customers that are using processing payroll. We were talking about one this morning. Processes payroll for 30,000 employees. Is that the right number, Keith? 33,000 employees. There's a lot of customers that have 150 employees, but it scales very much so with into the larger organizations. There's some employees that have, or there's a few organizations that have a little bit more than that, and like some restaurant chains and stuff like that that process payroll for a lot of employees. So that's relatively rare. 4,000 to 5,000 is a little bit more common, and then you get down into the hundreds, and that's really common. All right, some of the advanced capabilities, advanced labor reports. This is just a neat report. We talked about people really caring and department managers really caring how much money they're spending on labor. This is a nice nitty-gritty report with all kinds, and this is using report writer capabilities just to show a detailed breakdown by department, by position, by employee, by pay code, costs, FTEs, and everything that goes with it. Totals everything at the bottom, gives you a nice summary of the department total, how many FTEs you're using in that time frame. And I had it pre-configured for a certain time frame, so those are all report options that you have on this specific report. Okay, the ability to do payroll accruals. For sake of time, I'm not going to go too far into it. But the purpose of this window is to take the previous pay run that you ran, let's say that it ended on the 28th of the month, and post an accrual for those last 2 days, depending on what month you're in, 2 or 3 days of the month, so that you can have a true picture of your payroll costs for the entire month as you close out the month. So you can choose what accounts to accrue. You can post it for the number of, you pick the pay run, post it for the number of days that you wish to post. If it's 2 days or 3 days or 5 days, depending on when that pay period ended, that you're using as your baseline. It'll post to those, it'll post the accrual, and then automatically post a reversing entry on the first of the next month also. Okay? Widely used tool and originally part of Advanced Payroll, now part of the Extended Pack. Let's see here. What else do we want to show here from a human resources perspective? Actually, there's one more from a payroll perspective. A pay policy. Oops. Just real quick. Employees move around sometimes in organizations, and based on that, they get paid differently. This pay policy window is a way to show how, as an employee moves and as an employee jumps around, how their pay rate will vary. Now, most organizations also set this up at the employee level as well, so they'll have basically have a matrix to show the different ways an employee can get paid. If they work here and do this, they get this much amount. If they work here and do this, they get a different amount. It's all based on the primary pay code, in this case hourly. So when the employee gets a $1 raise, all that will still add up. They don't have to go through and change 15 different pay rates for the employee. They change one. Okay. Certifications. So keeping track of certifications, license, history, what's required. So a quick certification entry, endorsements, things like that is nice. And I always kind of chalk this up to risk management, because think about if you've got employees that drive vehicles, and that employee is driving a vehicle with an expired license, and they get in an accident and hurt somebody, who's calling? The lawyer, that's right. So you don't want that to happen. So this really falls under the category of risk management, of making sure that the employees have the credentials that they need to do their job, and that you're monitoring that and keeping that information up to date, keeping it in the human resources system, sending out reminders to supervisors that, hey, this employee's driver's license expires in 30 days. We tie these typically to smart list reminders that pop up in the system. You can do a business alert, a little bit more complicated. Just as a side note, we also have a product that does some alerting capabilities as well that's a little bit more dynamic. So, okay, but that's the idea, is to make sure that you're proactive, you're on top of the information. It isn't hidden in an Excel file somewhere. It's coming up to you and saying, hey, here's a list of all the employees that have a driver's license that expires in the next 30 days. So, make sure they get it updated. There's also an employee health and wellness component, keeping track of, this is really popular in healthcare, keeping track of tetanus shots, vaccinations, and things like that employees need to have. Again, making sure that they stay safe, and that if you're dealing with any kind of somebody where the employees are caring for somebody else, making sure that they're not, transferring bad things to those employees. Make sure that employees are protected and your customers or patients are also protected. So that's a quick overview of some of the advanced features. I didn't do the benefit enrollment, but that's also within Business Portal, doing online benefit enrollment and opening that up to employees online to have that online experience, and also viewing some additional information there as well. Real quick, I'd probably kick myself if I didn't show Smart List. I'm going to show that real quick. Not part of the extended pack, but just want to make sure that we show it. If you're not familiar with Smart List, it's like water for the HR person. Gotta have it. You can always create lists of employees, filter on the list, find employees in certain benefit codes, employees in specific departments, have that list there, export it to Excel, whatever you need to do with it. But it's a great tool. It's a user tool so that the HR and payroll folks can create their own lists and create their own ad hoc reports that they need as they do their job daily. It could have you could have a smart list that's going to be, a list of employees that have a expiration in the next 30 days for that driver's license that we talked about. Okay, great tool. HR person's best friend, and anybody that uses Dynamics GP, this is typically their best friend as well. All right, now I got to go back to PowerPoint. All right, so that's a quick overview. Additional resources that are available to you, and this kind of falls into the line of, will I be the only one, or am I alone if I dive into this payroll thing on Dynamics GP? And the answer is no. There's thousands of customers that use it, and there's a lot of great partners out there that help support it and support you as customers. So a few of those, and I just want to put this up here for informational purposes. I'm not trying to sell wares or do anything like that. I just want to let you know who's out there that you can talk to if there's additional things that you want to talk about. Of course, we talked about integrity data. Green Chains is another great partner that focuses on payroll tax and a few other things. McCorma does the microcheck printing for the payroll checks. Time Matrix has a time and attendance system that sits in front of Dynamics GP. It's the most integrated time and attendance system for Dynamics GP. And they've been around a long time. Corporate Renaissance Group has a great performance management module that it really extends on top of the capabilities that are in Dynamics GP. My Staffing Pro does online applicant tracking, so outside of the system, but then brings that applicant and or newly hired employee data into the system. Binary Stream has a multi-entity manager tool. If you're running multiple FEINs in one Dynamics company, this enables you to do that and still print separate different W-2s and things like that for those employees. JAT is another tool that, and saw that they're here. They have a Benefit Connect module and also an interface to ADP also. Okay, again, people that are here to help you as you go down this road, and we'll answer any questions for you. I told them they had to because I was putting their information on the slide and said they would. All right, to sum up, we've talked about a lot of different things. I've talked relatively quickly, but payroll and human resources included with your Dynamics GP 2013 license. Okay, it's integrated with the rest of the system entirely. So it's integrated with the general ledger. It's integrated with payables. Payroll and human resources are integrated themselves. It lives in the same environment. It's not some extra piece that looks different or acts different. All the reporting tools are there and so on. It's used by thousands of other customers just like you, so you're not alone. It's a great tool. Familiar navigation, as you saw. It's robust. I'll talk a little bit out of school. I like to talk about AX and how fantastic it is, and I've seen the payroll module. There's a lot more features in Dynamics GP. I'll say it out loud to anybody that wants to listen to it. So I go head to head anytime. It's easy to use. As you saw, the navigation, how quickly we could get through all that information. I had a different saying under reports. The legal review of the slide deck made me change. It's reports, reports, reports. I had reports out the wazoo because, as you saw, there are literally 300 and some reports just from Report Writer, then all the Excel reports, then all the smart lists. You can have reports all over the place. And a little action item there. Connect with your Microsoft partner. Connect with Keith or I or any of those other partners that you saw on the list there that have good information and have a lot of experience working with those thousands of customers, primarily in the United States. I don't have any experience with Canadian payroll. We showed U.S. payroll. There is a Canadian payroll module also that works differently. They spell check differently is one of the, okay, come on, you got to laugh at that one. They spell it correctly. We spell it wrong, right? So that's a good point. All right, what's next? The roadmap. You've heard a lot of talk about what's coming. GP 2013 R2, GP 2015, GP Next, service-based architecture, services, stuff like that. And so when we talk about Business Portal, we talk about Dynamics GP, and specifically when we talk about human resources and payroll, you've heard them talk about changes to Business Portal and how those features will be delivered and deployed in the architecture in which that's based. What they're doing is making those business rules and that data available through those services, not through client server, Dynamics GP, as it's always been, or through the Business Portal. And the ability to develop applications that have access to those in different formats on different platforms, not just Windows, iOS or Droid or whatever. That's the direction they're going. And there probably will be, a little bit of a gap. And I call it the shifting gears. When you shift gears, ultimately you go faster and it's better, but you've got to slow down a little bit in between to do that, or you're going to tear something up. So long term, it's going to be a vast improvement into the experience you have from a payroll and human resources side. You will see much broader based functionality, much better access for employees, much better access for managers, much better access for those that function within human resources from the ability to report. What you're seeing is with the new time entry application is the beginning. That's the initial thought. But when you start thinking about all those other HR functions and being able to deploy those as a service to where anyone could have access to it from an app, whatever an app is just a local light application that gets that information and gives you a way to interact with that. Yes, there will be some a short time frame where you'll have might have a little bit of a gap in what's there. But long term, to me, what it tells me that's been in working with Dynamics GP for a long time is that they're on a long-term track with the product, and they're thinking, Microsoft will do this. They'll think 5 years ahead instead of maybe 6 months ahead sometimes. But it's a long-term investment in the product, and Dynamics GP is leading that way with some of this service-based architecture tools. I don't care what you hear in any other session. That's the truth. All right, additional questions. Before we get into questions, I just want to say thanks everyone for attending, because I'll get wrapped up in the questions and everybody will leave. But thanks everyone for attending. Please fill out your evaluations, and so we can determine the value of this session, how we might be able to change it. If you have ideas for other things that are helpful from a payroll and human resources perspective, things you need to see, things you want to know, definitely put those in the evaluation so that we can have content that's relevant and timely and helps you, justify your vast investment, not only in Convergence, but also in Dynamics. All right, with that, questions. Let's start over here.
Is there any useful ways
PEO being?
like trying to disparity, where you're getting all the legal and payroll is all being paid by a third party,
Mhm.
but to try to capture that into, is there any way to make it, try to get payroll company,
Mhm.
get it down to do some of your own reporting, rather than just, getting an out of box standard report where there's not a lot of customization available.
Mhm. Yeah, and so the question was, are there ways to use with other payroll service providers that, so I equate that with what we see with a lot of customers that utilize ADP and Paychecks, where they're having the primary data is living there at ADP or Paychex, but they're bringing some of that back in, and there's ways to do that, and there's tools to do that, to bring that data back into the payroll side so that you can run department reports, position reports, pay history reports, and also the most important part is being, integrating to the general ledger, so all the accounting is correct. And there are ways to do that. With ADP, there's already tools built just because they're the biggest one. With other ones, it might take a little work, but it is possible. The ones I showed did not. I would connect with JAT. They're probably would have the most experience in it. And there's, I think, you're from JAT, correct? Yeah. Okay, good, because I've pointed to you a couple times. So I would connect with this guy. He'd probably have the best information. Other questions?
Payroll and HR in particular, and Microsoft modules in general in Great Plains, what's the best way to get an overview of the capacities of these organizations? I can't seem to find white papers that really describe what's going on, and you can get the manuals, but that's not a very effective way to understand kind of an overview of the application.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would suggest talking to your Microsoft partner, and you're basically probably just going to have to set up a demonstration to kind of go through it in a little bit more detail than what we did today, obviously. But and if you have specific questions on, is there a limit on the number of employees we can process or anything like that, certainly run those by them. But I don't know that there is a good general overview of the product. And I would associate the reason for that being that it's so broad that that would be either a really thick paper or a 20-hour YouTube video. So, okay, hopefully that helps. Question? Yeah, good point. Tax updates, state and federal tax updates are included, and you can update those online without even having to exit the application. I typically show that. I failed to do so this time. So, state and federal tax updates. If you need local tax updates, you can key those in, or you can talk to the folks at Green Shades. They're kind of the local tax and payroll tax experts. Yes?
Yeah, I know I'm in a minority here on this, but we haven't made the jump into
Okay.
2013.
Mm-hmm.
Is the starter pack included in GP 2010?
No, it's just GP 2013.
So either get this or not, we have to upgrade.
You can get it now, but it'd be a lot more expensive. So, yeah, I would say, and that's the reason that we kind of put the session together, is so that, here's what's included with your 2013 license. So, yes, I'd say upgrade and then implement it. It'd save yourself a lot of money. So, other questions? Okay, not seeing any, so we'll stick around for a few minutes. Again, thank you. I hope this was informative. Feel free to, obviously, please fill out the evaluation so we can measure it. And thanks again. Have a wonderful Convergence. And if you have additional questions, you can come up.